think that I have.
No letter, no documentation of any kind? Could you step aside?
Speak Hebrew?
No.
You'll be staying in Tel Aviv?
We're going to the Holy Land.
Who's we?
My fiancé and I.
Why isn't he traveling with you?
He had to stay for business.
Pregnant? What are these?
It's film. It's motion picture film.
You have anybody meeting you in Tel Aviv?
Yes, it's Ben.
Are you a resident of the United Kingdom?
My fiancé's.
No, I'm from Ireland.
Over there.
I'm here to see a friend.
Which city?
In Bethlehem.
May I look through your bag for a moment?
I think so.
You can't bring this.
Non, mais je n'ai pas déclaré pour la très simple raison que je ne pensais pas qu'un cadeau constituait nécessairement. Je sais que c'est des bouteilles de vin, je sais qu'il y a de l'alcool là-dedans. Ça n'a pas de rapport avec le cadeau. Si vous avez acheté, vous avez le droit d'entrer une bouteille d'alcool au Canada.
Please, no fruit or vegetable. That includes pomegranates. It's on your form. I like to eat the seedless. One each day. Forever. I'm sorry, that's not allowed.
For security reasons, please do not leave your bags unattended. Veuillez garder avec vous vos bagages à main en tout temps pour des raisons.
What are you doing?
This way I don't need to bring it in. I eat it here at the gate of your country. I bring love in my stomach. Will you try?
So your passport's expired.
It is?
Yeah. You have a driver's license?
Oh, of course. And they sent you along? Without a crew?
They wouldn't have gotten permission to send a crew there.
Why not?
Well, it's not that easy to shoot a story about the Armenian genocide in Turkey. It's politically sensitive.
In what way?
Because the Turkish authorities don't want to admit it happened.
Well, roll up your sleeves. Please, roll up your sleeves. I don't do drugs. Can you open that bag, please?
time. What do you think is in here?
Hello everybody, thanks for coming. Now we will have a few more minutes for additional chairs. It means additional attention to this meeting we have for that. I would like to thank our dearest friend and colleague and great cinema lover and member of our regional selection committee, Alexander Melian, for this alternative. And another wonderful colleague and friend who is doing a lot of support throughout many years to our festival, ΟւΓΙղ for moderating this talk. And of course, Ատոմ Էգոյանի.
Very dangerous now.
Yeah.
Hot mic.
Thank you, Alexander. That was very, very emotional to watch. I haven't seen those repetitions, and they seem obvious when you win. But I think something traumatic happened to me when we came to Canada from Egypt at the customs office. I think I must have watched my parents be interrogated by a customs officer, and I think this must have had a very strong impression because it's repeated so many times in the films, and you've made that clear, so very beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's a beautiful way to kick off this HBU rendezvous. This is less beautiful, but we'll figure out how this goes with the microphone. First of all, thank you all for being here in such great numbers. I don't think I've seen this room ever as full as it is now, so I'm very happy to see you all. Atomm, again, thank you so much for being here with us as well. It's going to be a lot of applause today, I feel. But I hope it also will be a lot of questions. I will be the moderator. I have loads of questions for Atomm as well, but I mostly want you to also ask anything that you want. So at some point, if you have questions, please raise your hand. We have volunteers here with microphones so that we can give you the microphone and you can ask the question. This is important that you use the microphone because otherwise the interpreter doesn't hear what you are saying and some people are missing out language-wise, which would be a shame. But Atomm, I would like to begin maybe with a very obvious point, which is the opening film yesterday at the 21st edition of Golden Apricot Film Festival, Seven Veils, a film which you yesterday also already mentioned has a particular significance for you because it is also, let's say, you going back maybe to a bit of your theater roots, shooting a film behind the scenes of the production of an opera called Salome, which you have staged once in 1996 and then staged a couple of years ago and filmed behind the scenes. I first wanted to ask, actually, how was that process for you as a filmmaker, revisiting these things and making a new film out of it, but maybe also as a person, to be at a stage where you are consciously going back to the things that you've done in the past?
The production that I did of Salome in 1996 was very provocative and It had a very strong effect on the society it was presented to at that time. It's been remounted.
Can we do something about this microphone, by the way? It is a bit intense.
It's been remounted several times around the world. So when the company said they were going to remount it in 23, my feeling was I didn't want to direct it. I wanted a new direction. I wanted a woman to direct it and have her perspective. But this wasn't possible for economic reasons. It cost so much money to do a new production. So I invented this woman, Janine, and I invented a whole history of what it meant for her to remount this, dealing with her own personal issues and her histories. And I constructed these 7 veils of men, male presences, from her father to her mentor, might have been her lover, who originally did the production, to her husband, to the cast member, to the extra that she falls in love with, to the spirits of Oscar Wilde and Richard Strauss, all these people that she's trying to negotiate. And she becomes a very isolated character. She's very on her own, in a way. And I really felt for her. I felt that, in a way, she was the avatar of this person that I wished was creating the piece. And so it became this new interpretation. So what you're seeing on stage is actually what was on stage. This is very irritating.
Let's try to swap this.
So, so what you're seeing on stage is what she is, so many aspirations of her own. But you can also see the frustrations that she has doing that.
I think that other mic is still on, by the way, for the people in the booth. Thank you. Yes. Okay.
The sound last night was also not very good in the film, so it seems to be an issue.
It is chasing you, maybe. Okay. We're gonna try to. We'll try to push through, because maybe we should give 1 minute to just figure out if it can be helped. Well, then the problem is interpretation. We need a microphone for that.
Okay.
Check. Okay, I think we can give it another go.
Okay.
Sorry everybody for the technical inconvenience. It happens. We will try to just push through it. I think now this sounds pretty clean, so let's go for it. Well, okay, so basically my follow-up question was, which I really wanted to ask is, before you started making cinema and got really interested in the world of film, you were especially keen on the world of theater. This is kind of where maybe your early creative forays come from. And I wanted to maybe ask if you could paint a little bit of a picture for us what those days were like for you when you were writing plays, directing plays, putting them up in Canada. What kind of creative energy and scene was there? Basically, how was that?
It was basically, I had these very great, when I was young, there was a drama club at my school. Okay, the mic is not on. Okay.
Then I'll give you the mic first.
I had a very influential drama teacher at school, and he basically made us do exercises as children where we were play acting. And the moment I started doing this and I started telling my friends to pretend to be something, I found it so exciting. And I realized that I was able to construct a reality, because as a child I felt like I was in a reality that I was outside of, I suppose. We were a very unusual family, as everyone knows. We were the only Armenian family in this very English community on the west coast of Canada in Victoria. But I felt that suddenly I could make these realities exist on stage. And that became completely consuming to me. At the same time, there were these shows like Monty Python's Flying Circus, and there were these, and so this idea of absurdism, these absurd ideas of people acting in unusual ways, became very entrancing. And I started reading theater, Samuel Beckett and UNESCO and Pinter, and these writers had a very strong influence on me. And then you start reading Ibsen and these amazing writers, Strindberg, and the drama, the psychodrama, the way that families are being examined. And I felt my family really needed to be examined. My parents were both artists, but they were not successful, and they had to raise a family, so they found another living. They were never happy unless they were painting. So this question of creativity and needing to have access to creativity, but the frustration of a creative life was something I was exposed to very early on. To the point that even when I left high school, I didn't study to become an artist. I went to international relations because I thought I needed a job. I needed to work in the Foreign Office, or I needed to have a 9-to-5 because I would never make a living as an artist. But I was always aware that there were these alternate realities that artists were creating, and that there was something very inspiring about that, of being able to create worlds where things behaved governed by certain laws that were somehow utopic, even if they were dysfunctional. Like in many of my films, the characters or the families are dysfunctional, and they have certain dreams. Like for instance, in this new film, Janine, Amanda Seyfried, she has the fantasy that if she does this opera, it's going to deal with her past. But she realizes once she gets into this process that in fact it complicates her past and makes it even more traumatizing. She re-traumatizes herself in the process of trying to deal with her trauma. And that wasn't expected, because human beings, we go by our impulse. We don't necessarily understand what's best for us. But we have feelings that make us, we know what makes us feel better at the moment. So let's say in Exotica, the way this guy goes into this nightclub, he thinks it makes him feel better, but it's actually extending his trauma. And maybe this is also part of my background as an Armenian as well. Like our traumas have been extended because of this strange denial of our history, the trauma we're experiencing right now, this terrible time that the world doesn't know about, and we keep trying to explain to people how catastrophic this is, what's happened to us in these 2 years. And so we're constantly being frustrated in our ability to communicate our pain. And yet we live with pain all the time as human beings. And this is what I'm interested in showing in my dramas, I suppose. Yeah.
Take the microphone now, and I think you're getting another microphone as well. Thank you so much. That was a beautiful answer, and I feel like that already gets so deeply to the core of what your cinema, but also maybe all your creative outlets are about. I wanted to ask one more question to segue a little bit more into that filmmaking space, because in the time when you started kind of transitioning into film, this was a very interesting time in Toronto as well, where there was a new generation of more experimental, more artistically daring filmmakers that were collaborating, that were maybe also trying to change the face of Toronto or of Canadian cinema a little bit. Can you talk about this transitionary space where you started working with film, experimenting with it, figuring out what to do with it? What was that like for you, actually? Was that an insecure process, or did it come from some sort of strong beliefs?
Well, it came at this moment where film technology was becoming more available. And so, in some ways, when you look at my early features up until the 90s, you're seeing the development of film technology, which allowed a low-budget filmmaker to work with the means that they had. So from working in Super 8 to video to 16 millimeter to 35 to 35 anamorphic, and each of these steps were available because my budgets were gradually getting higher and higher. But the first films were made for tiny amounts of money. Like when you're looking at my first features, Next of Kin and Family Viewing, they were made for tens of thousands of dollars, and they were made because of Arts Council grants. At the same time, in Canada, the films that were being made were really stupidly high-budget films using American stars that no one was interested in watching. But there was this school of us that were making these films using grants and working on each other's projects because we're still friends. Like, I'm still good friends with Patricia Rosama, Bruce McDonald, Peter Metler, Jeremy Pedezwa. You know, we were making these films together, and they were getting attention in festivals. And the festivals at the time were really important because you could find commissioning editors from European channels that would give you small amounts of money that you could then increase your budget with. So it was step by step. The good news is this, that the amount of money that we had to make those first features is still the amount that you would need to make your films now because of digital technology. That is to say, my first features, most of the money went to film stock, buying 16 millimeter film stock, which cost most of the budget. Now, and it looked terrible, like the quality was not very good, the sound was not very good. So now we have the incredible revolution that we can have these instruments to create high quality images. There's nothing to separate the imagination of the filmmaker from the story they want to tell.
But it is interesting because, like you said, some of your films, they gradually get a bigger budget, they get picked up at film festivals. Some of your films, especially in the 90s, they coincide also with a very interesting time, I think, where you see this new like indie film generation, which really shows a lot of experimentation in narrative and really intense thematic treatment of material, but still somehow manages to get this crossover worldwide success. I think a big part of the reason that some of those films happen or establish that for you has also to do with the particular way that you treat desire and eroticism, and the way that that, of course, is a very seducing and alluring thing for an audience to actually engage with. But that must have been a very, let's say, thrilling decade to be a filmmaker in, where you could actually work on these very specific, strange films that somehow do get picked up globally by so many people.
Yeah, it was, looking back, it was incredible that there was an ability to market these films, and there were the distribution companies that were excited to take on the films and to present them. Now, it's not to say I wasn't confused. Let's say when Miramax distributed Exotica, they were selling it as a sex thriller, and I got very upset at the marketing. But now it feels like naive. Why would I be upset? Because they were promoting the film. And I thought they were cheapening the film, but as they said, it doesn't matter if we are cheapening it. If more people see it, that's good for you.
It's like the Trojan horse narrative almost, like people think they get a sex thriller and then they get like this crazy film on trauma and loss and grief and all these other films.
So here's the crazy thing with the new film, Seven Veils, like 3 different American distributors have said, why doesn't she do something horrifying at the end? It feels like she's going to create an act of horror. It feels like she's going to take the head off of the singer herself. And I went, wow, I mean, I guess if I did that, then it would be more commercial, or it'd be a horror film, but it's not what I would ever do. I have so many stories where people tell me what I should do with an ending, but if you go that way, it destroys the film.
It destroys the entire contract, because one of the pleasures of watching your films is trying to actually figure out how to navigate through them. What is the organizing principle of all of these characters in their alienation and their anguish and their yearning and all of these other things?
Yeah, everything is connected, everything is designed, but it requires a lot of patience on the part of the viewer, I mean, you really have to stick with the film, and this is why maybe in this culture it's difficult because people don't have the attention span. When I made these films in the 90s, people would go to the cinema and they would be committed to being in there for an hour and a half. Now when you're watching it on a streaming service, if in half an hour you're bored, you're going to go to something else. So it's changed the culture for this type of film, definitely. So I'm very grateful that I had this period of time where the films could be watched with a degree of concentration. Yeah.
I'll ask one more question about this as well, and then I'll turn to the audience because I'm pretty sure you're also burning to ask questions as well. But I already mentioned this aspect of desire, which I think is such an important part of your offer, I would say, in general. You already mentioned psychodrama in your first answer, but can you maybe somehow put into words why it is that I think all your films revolve around this, like, overwhelmingly big feeling that drives a lot of human beings, and why it is that you want to somehow channel it in the film?
We all want to be loved. We all want to be loved for the reasons that we believe we should be loved. I think as Armenians that becomes really complicated. We want to be loved as a culture, but we also understand that we've been so vilified, so detested, as a culture. We still are, and we don't understand it because we think we should be loved. Human beings think they should be loved. And there's so many barriers to why we are not loved. Of course, you could say many of these barriers are because we don't love ourselves, but it's difficult to love yourself when you don't have the formational evidence that you're worthy of being loved. So these exchanges are so important for me to examine because they're part of my understanding of myself as well. Like, the insecurities we have are based on this feeling that we are not loving ourselves or allowing other people to love us in the way that we want to be seen. And yet in a world where it's all about representation and all of the currency of how to be seen is so easily traded, how do we navigate this? It's very precarious. And so I think this is why I'm using technology so much in my film. It's not because I'm fascinated by technology. I'm actually pretty bad with technology. But it feels to me a very interesting metaphor for these frailties or these veils. Yeah. These veils that we are constantly clouding over ourselves. They're very complex. Like what Janine is dealing with is very complex. We know she had this problematic relationship with her father. We know she communicated the story of that to this man, this director, Charles. We know that Charles then shared with her this story in creating this vision of Salome. And we know that Charles must feel guilty about that because he said that in his will, if it's to be remounted, that Janine had the opportunity. But did he understand Janine well enough that this would also be a curse? Yeah. That she would also, did he understand the dynamics of the opera company? But he's not there to answer those questions. No. So she's left even more isolated. So what was intended to be an act of love actually ends up becoming an act of alienation and of torture. Violence, yeah. And violence, right? So this happens in many of the films, right? It happens, in Ararat, like let's say Rafi, who's on this crazy mission in Turkey, confused after watching this historic epic of his history being told, he goes on a trip to Turkey, and he has this crazy meeting with some Turkish somebody who gives him these cans of drugs and gives him a story, and he creates a story for himself, and he tells this story to this customs officer, and as he's telling this story, he begins to actually empower himself, knowing all the time that he's about to be criminalized. And the miracle is that Christopher Plummer somehow understands what this transposition is. Sometimes people understand. Sometimes a stripper in a nightclub will understand what's going on. Sometimes you will meet somebody, they don't articulate it, but they feel that you're going through a journey, and they allow you passage through that journey. And that, to me, are the most generous moments of human contact. That someone is able to give you this feeling that you have been acknowledged. That you have, even if they don't understand everything you're carrying, that you've been acknowledged. And I would say that Janine, in this film, Seven Veils, is the most lonely character, because the only person who acknowledges her is you, the viewer. Nobody, none of the other human beings around seem to acknowledge what she's suffering through.
This just reminds me as a comment, and then I'll go to the audience, just the ending of Exotica, this embrace between the two characters, that they see this, they understand each other, is still one of the most heart-wrenching and beautiful scenes I know from all the films I've seen, so thank you for that.
Yeah, but whether they know exactly what it is, they don't, they can't, you know, but they understand that there is. And I think this happens, you know, this is why we fall in love, you know, that we feel someone else understands us. Someone else sees us as we see ourselves. But in our culture, it's very difficult to see ourselves as well. And so this becomes really so multi-layered. And if I can, as an artist, help chart that course, and also deal with these questions of national identity, which are also burning in me, then I feel I'm contributing something. Yeah.
Well, we're very grateful for that. I'm looking at the audience. I bet there's a lot of questions. I'll start at the front row, forgive me, and I'll work my way to the back. I'll start with you, and then I'll go to you. The mic is coming.
Thank you. Adam, just before Seven Veils, you adapted another great opera about someone who was killed, Bela Bartok's Bluebeard's Castle.
Yeah, yeah.
60 years earlier, the great British filmmaker Michael Powell had also adapted that. That film was unseen until a couple of years ago when it was restored. Have you seen it?
Yes, I have. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's amazing about Bartok's opera is that it was actually written by Bela Balázs, who was a great film theorist, right? So there is this incredible marriage there between cinema and I wish you had seen what I did, because at the COC, it was during COVID, so they gave me an empty stage and a full orchestra, and so I had, for those of you who know the opera, there's 7 keys to these different rooms. So I used an earlier film of mine, Felicia's Journey, which is based on Bluebeard's Castle. And so the 7 keys were 7 USB keys that were opening different sort of like compartments. But it's an incredible piece of film music. Like if you separate what Bartok is doing, and a matter of fact, it's been used by Julia Hogg in a number of her films as film music.
Well, thank you for that question. There's one in the front as well. I think it's on.
Thank you, Adam. My question is about the connection with your characters, the feedback you get from them, a lesson learned or something you do from them. Thank
you. Basically, it's just to be open to other experiences, not to kind of create barriers based on preconceptions. Like the characters who are able to move forward or find some sort of consolation have allowed themselves into a space that requires curiosity. I think the characters who are open and curious are the ones that I learn the most from. But again, it takes a leap of faith very often.
But can you talk maybe a little bit about how you work with your actors as well? Because your films have a, let's say, a certain cerebral dissecting quality, and yet there's this intensity and intentionality to the emotions that we see on the screen very often.
I want my actors to saturate these characters with as much humanity as possible, because we can talk about these ideas, and I love talking about these ideas, but they are the repositories of human feeling, right? So they, at that moment, if they're not feeling something as they're saying those scenes or looking at those characters in a close-up, they can't be registering the intellectual idea of why they're there. Maybe in my really early films, they were very impassive because they were so catatonic.
Yeah.
But I would think that in the more recent films, they are invested with these passions and these desires. In the case of Janine, it's like this frustration that she's not going to be able to get these people to do what she knows they have done as characters before. So she's dealing with her own limitations as a director, maybe. I mean, this is posed by the podcaster who says, you know, you don't usually do opera, you're usually doing regional theaters and trade shows, which means that she's not really at this level. And that's why it's strange that the opera company has given her this chance, thinking that she's just going to replicate what was there, not knowing that she was going to challenge herself. But you can challenge yourself, but if you don't have the talent to extract that, then it becomes almost a torture machine.
Thank you so much. Back to the audience. I've had some on the front row as well, so I'll go there, over there. Yeah, you would have. Yes. Let's pass her the mic. Thank you. I think it's on.
Thank you.
Is it on?
Maybe.
Let's find out.
Yes. So one of your maker deals with a lot of symbolism. How can they keep the balance between being authentic and actually not making it into something commercial and actually getting the message through to a larger audience?
How did you balance between with symbolism to keep it authentic and trying to reach a large audience? Well, look, let's be clear. I don't reach large audiences. I mean, I am not a, you know, when you talk to Alexander Payne, ask him those questions.
That's in 2 days here, by the way.
I have been lucky with a couple of my films that they have reached large audiences, mostly against my will, mostly because of the way they've been marketed. So Exotica, yeah, did well because it was marketed as a sex thriller. Chloe did well because it was a sex thriller. Remember did well because it was a revenge thriller. Captive actually ended up doing well, even though because it also had genre elements in it. So I think once you have genre elements, you give yourself a tremendous step forward. So like I was joking, but not joking, about this new film, where if I'd given it more horror elements, then maybe, because there's a lot of symbolism in this new film, but once people are indoctrinated into the genre, and they are buying that, and they're getting those commercial beats, then they go with anything. It's quite amazing to me. You get to have a lot of freeway, a lot of latitude. I think symbolism works best when it's Chloe, which is my most popular film. There was an incredible essay written about Christian symbolism in Chloe. And this person was taking frame grabs and showing like halos above characters' heads and crucifixes, and I didn't plan any of that, you know. But when I look at the frame grab, it almost makes me like feel like possessed, because you see that there are several scenes where there are halos above Chloe's head. But there was just lighting instruments that happened to be there and distortions that created those halos. So, but for this person, they were really clear, because they had a strong belief of what the film was. So I think as artists, we need to have structure, and we need to have symbols that will determine our own concept of the film. But the question of how important those are to viewers becomes actually very open. You know, we talk about Parajano's work, right? Which is full of symbols, but it's an internal system of symbols that he's created for himself. And it becomes really confusing for us sometimes, because when we look at his masterpiece, he's using symbols from different Caucasian cultures as well. You know, he's using Ukrainian symbols, he's using Azeri symbols at times, he's using Georgian symbols. We want to read everything as Armenian symbolology, but it's not necessarily. So it's very important to understand that it's a private world that the artist needs in order to create. And how it communicates to the viewer is not necessarily in their control.
Thank you so much. There was a question all the way in the back with the gentleman. Yeah, he has his hand raised now. Yeah, it's going to be hard to reach, but I also want the people in the back to be able to ask questions. Otherwise, we have a front row bias.
I was wondering if you cared to comment about the irony of Kevin Spacey from last night's show. Not so much about Kevin Spacey's presence, but the fact that he's had his last couple of years, the issues, but the subject of your movie, which was, imbalance, also about imbalance in power, about sexual abuse, about not to mention rape and all that.
I've said actually to the festival organizers that this was either the most brilliant combination or it was just by luck or chance, but I would like to think that it was a brilliant combination because it really raises these issues, right, of the complexities of Me Too. The complexity of what those decisions made by the perpetrators are, which are pretty blunt and obvious. It's an exercise of power, but also what the question of restorative justice is. So in the case of my film, when Clea is attacked, her form of restorative justice is that she can go to the opera company and ask them to give her girlfriend, her partner, the role. And when the partner decides not to actually accept that because it's an insult to her, it's not, then she cancels the singer. Now the question is, would she have canceled the singer otherwise? I don't answer that. But there are we are living in a time when, as an artist, I have to respond to the realities of what I see around me. And one of those realities is that I was sharing an evening with Kevin Spacey, who's also a great actor and obviously is worthy of being honored, but also has his history. So I thought it was actually, as an art installation, an incredible choice.
This is beautiful, Atomy. Maybe you just see entire life and all its contradictions as an art installation. That's actually very inspiring.
Another movie.
Atomy
Yeah,
movie.
right.
It's already in the making. Let's see if there's some other questions. Where's the mic? I'm overwhelmed by a choice, but I'll give you, yes, over there. Can you raise your hand again? Yes, okay, it's there. Perfect, thank you.
Hello. So I have a question about sound. How much are you as director involved in doing some post-production, basically like sound design? And I would like to bring an example of from one of your films, from Ararat, because there's, in the very beginning, when we see the sequence in the airport, we hear horse footsteps. So how do you work with sound? How much you are involved in it?
I've been working with and we work a ton on sound design. We use the same re-recording mixer for all the films. I'm sorry that the sound last night was not good, because this film has a lot of detailed sounds as well with the music. I'm happy that you can hear those sounds of the horse, because they are the premonition of what we're going to see later in the film. I don't know if it's clear, but when Aznavour, it's his mother who is surrounded by those horses. It's the mother who was raped, and it's the mother who is holding the pomegranate seeds, the woman that we're seeing in the film. is her, so those sounds have been transmitted to him by the stories of the mother. So he's coming in and he's remembering those stories that he didn't hear, but were told by the mother to him. So again, that's amazing that you picked that up, but it's like the question about symbolism. There are things that the artist needs to know. In this film, for instance, with Seven Veils, the strongest thing that happens at the end of the film, when she is going up the stairs, and we're hearing Strauss's music, is that over that music we hear Salome singing. She should be singing her final aria, but we've removed the aria and we just have the music. So the aria now is in Amanda Seyfried's close-up. So she's owned the voice through her face. And it's interesting because I don't know if anyone will ever understand that's what we did. You'd have to really analyze the score. But it's very, very important for me as an artist to know that sonically, not only is it important, we had to spend a lot of money to record with the orchestra without the singer. We had to have a clean recording just of the orchestral sound. So you have to anticipate sound before you're shooting sometimes, because you need to create and collect the sounds while you're shooting that you will be using later on to color the track.
Can I add to this, because it's a great question, also your collaboration with Michael Dana, the composer that has worked on most of your films for such a long time, and I've been for the longest time also obsessed with his scores, and mostly the way that he uses synthetic instruments with non-Western influences and a lot of Armenian instrumentation as well. It's like such a poignant part, and almost every score I think in your films is its own character.
Yeah, and Michael is so incredibly determined to be authentic. So one of the things I'm so grateful for okay, when we did Ararat, we knew that most of those musicians we could find in Los Angeles, Armenians that were in Los Angeles. But Michael said, no, we have to go to Armenia. We have to record these sounds in Armenia, in those churches, with those choirs who are in that space. And I'm so grateful that we made this journey. So we all the Armenian music is from musicians here that we recorded in 2001 in very primitive conditions. It's not the same recording studios you have now. Also, like whenever he wants to have in Exotica, he had the sound of an Indian nai in mind. He went to India and recorded it there. So he feels that the spirit of the place is also transmitted mysteriously in the recording.
It's like your films have an aura as well.
Yeah, so all of these things that you do, and I think sound is super important. And if you ever have a chance to watch this film again with a really good sound system, I think you'll have a whole different experience of it, because the instrumentation, first of all, the Strauss music is incredible, but it depends on your hearing the detail of the instrumentation. And we had like 40 mics in the pit, and we were really coloring the shape of the orchestra through the 7/1 recording.
Thank you so much. I'm looking again to the audience. I think we'll go a bit more front row. I'll give you a question. I see someone who's very eager. Yeah. Yes, that's also good. Yes.
First of all, thank you. I wanted to ask about the limitations, because we all have lots of ideas and try to do something in the movie. Were there any things that crazy experimental that you wanted to do in the movies but you haven't done it because of this, some financial stuff or producer stuff or something like this? Can you just give some examples of things that you wanted to do but you didn't do, or you're planning to do in the future?
Look, it's the torture of being a filmmaker. The torture is budget, and I was just talking about this with a friend at lunch. I mean, if I could write, if I felt confident as a writer, I would be writing these novels, right? But my vision needs money, and unfortunately, if I'm shooting in Toronto, it needs a lot of money because Toronto has become very expensive. So this film, it's way more expensive than it should be because we're shooting in an opera house, we're shooting in the middle of Toronto, we're shooting with the unions who own the opera house. So we had to shoot this in 18 days. So we're going crazy trying to...
Which is not a lot of days.
No, not a lot of days. But I've written scripts that, that I would love to have made, but they were just too expensive. Like I couldn't raise the money to make those films because the film has to be, look, make no illusion about it. You can make a film for a grant. Like my first films were made with arts grants, and I can make a film like Calendar for a grant because the German television station gave me $100,000 to make this film. Or, you know, like my first films were made for less than $100,000 by grants. But the moment you get past a certain amount, even if you're getting government support, even if you're getting tax credits, you still have to raise at least 1/3 of the money privately from people who believe that there is a commercial return. That's the bottom line. Like, there's no one is going to give you money just because they think you should make the film. They have to be able to understand the viability. So every project, there has to be something that feels that it's commercially viable. And that's really a magic trick. You know, like that is the magic.
Can I ask something maybe sensitive about that? Because like you were earlier mentioning the films that have, let's say, a stronger genre, let's say, format within them. Those are films that have done better at the box office and simultaneously have also been your films that have had less positive critical reception as well.
Absolutely.
How do you...
Yeah.
Because this is an interesting, of course, dialectic that I think every filmmaker, or double-bind that every filmmaker finds themselves in, but mostly in the 20s and the 2010s, this is a thing that you also had to navigate maybe a little bit as well. How was that for you?
Well, it's difficult because I understand it, because the moment, look, if I genuinely believed in genre, and there are some filmmakers who really do get excited about genre, then those films probably would work differently. But I think the one thing I can tell all of you is audiences are super smart. And if you're not sincere about what you're presenting, if you don't believe that what you're showing to people is what you are sincerely feeling, the audiences will sense that and they will react against you. So you can't make a genre movie unless you love that type of genre movie. It cannot be successful. And I would say this, that even the genre films I've made that were successful, if I really loved those genres, they would have been even more successful, right? Like, so they've done okay, but they would have done even better if I was a person who loved those genres. So let's say with this film of Seven Veils, so if at the end I have Amanda, like when she goes to the opening night, if she takes an AK-47 and she shoots everybody on stage, you know, maybe that would have been a great horror ending, but I would have felt, I wouldn't have believed it, right? And I don't think anyone else would have believed it either. So, but when I look at, we were talking before with a friend about the films of Jordan Peele, like those are really sincerely made. Like he's using genre because it's visceral to him. And you know, he's loved those films, and he loves making those films, and you can feel the excitement he has in exploring the parameters of that. So you have to be true to yourself, right?
And I find, what I find so interesting is that all these genre films still, they click in meticulously in your oeuvre if you have to take it as a whole, like this body of work. For instance, Remember is a film that I very much love because many of your films are about erasure and about decay and about absence of things, and this is a film also often absence of history or erasure of history, and this is a film about a man with memory loss that is completely embodying all of the themes that are often present in your work.
Yes.
So can you talk maybe a little bit about that film? Because
Well,
it's like such a fascinating film.
Okay, but here's the thing about Remember. I love this film too because I think Christopher Plummer's amazing.
Yes.
And I got to work with Martin Landau. I did a Twilight Zone episode with him in my 20s.
Speaking of genre, by the way.
Yeah, speaking of genre. But when you ask, like, why, what's the plan? How many people have seen Remember? Okay, so when you ask what was the plan of Martin Landau, like what did he want to have happen? when he gives this letter to Christopher Plummer. So most people would say that Christopher Plummer hunts down the Nazi and kills him. But that was not my plan. Like, I thought it was obvious. All he wants is that Christopher Plummer is going to get caught, and whoever catches him will find this letter, and the letter is going to get publicity, and that's how the story will get known. Because otherwise, anything else seems impossible. It seems impossible that this old man is going to be able to go across the country and actually, with his memory loss, and find this person and shoot him dead. But that's not what the audience wanted to believe. So I had an idea of what the plot was, but it didn't really matter. And I don't think it even mattered for the actors. It goes back to what I was saying before about symbolism. This was my reason for making the film.
Yeah.
But the emotional reason overtook the rational reason. And so the combination of this emotional kind of like truth and this rational structure creates this alchemy that works somehow. It's the same thing that maybe in The Sweet Hereafter, like the reason why the character does what she does is very different from the way most people understand it. But you don't have control over what the audience thinks, unless you are one of these, like Alexander Payne, who I think really understands how a viewer is going to feel. And maybe when you talk to Alexander, you know, he will, I think he always knows what the audience is going to feel.
I think he's very good at orchestrating the emotions. Yeah.
Yeah, I just know what I feel. I really just know what I feel, and I pray that the audience is going to be trusting and will go along for the ride.
Thank you. I'm looking at the audience again. There's some questions. There's one over there. Yeah, in the middle. Yes. Can we get a mic?
Oh, hi.
Oh, sorry. Okay, there's a but then we'll bring it to you afterwards. Also in the middle. Well,
hi, Atom. Thanks for your film. I was struck yesterday by while I was watching when Amanda speaks about that tiny space between the stage and the audience, and I was wondering also how much that space is also embodied by yourself while shooting film, and also your position within the theater and this play, and how you also shot those scenes. How do you see that tiny space?
Look, when you're doing theater, everybody you're working with, if you were all actors in a play I was doing now, and we were trying something on the stage, you would all know if it's working or not. You would see it immediately. We share this idea. There's no mystery about how theater is going to function by the participants. In film, it's all in pieces. So it's only the director, the filmmaker, knows how these pieces are going to fit. Only the director is recording the horse sounds and will know that if I put the horse sounds over this shot, it will have a subconscious effect that will lead to a feeling later on that the scenes are going to be structured this way. Every time I've made a film, my closest collaborators, the people I've talked to, have come to me and said, now I understand. Like they never understood as we were talking about it or shooting it, how this was going to come together, but when they see the finished film, they see it. Even my composer. But in theater, it's always explicit. It's there. It's working or not working, and everyone understands that. And it changes from night to night. So it is a very frail bridge, in fact, that connects, you know, between the audience and the performer in theater. In film, it's a very different bridge, because everyone wants to believe that what they're seeing is real, and they accept it in a different way.
Thank you. And there's the question over there. Yes?
Hi again.
Hi.
So my question is more about creative process intertwining with life experience, perhaps. In most of your movies, characters deal with loneliness and isolation. I was wondering, how do you tap into that energy, and how do you get it across for your cast members? Is it open to interpretation for them, or is it more director related? Thank you.
I think sometimes the actors are surprised at how lonely they are. Like, I remember when Amanda saw the film, I mean, she was surrounded by all these people as we were shooting, and there was so much love, and we were all just enjoying this experience so much, making it together. But she understood that the character that she's playing ultimately is very alone. And she understood it when she was doing the voiceover, when she was writing the letter to Charles, when she was understanding the frustration of what it meant to see these old tapes and the feelings that it was bringing in her. She's also understanding, I think many times the characters are looking at other people and are incapable of telling them everything that they're feeling. That happens a lot in the film. That they look at each other and they go, I could tell you so much right now, but I don't think you would be able to absorb it. And that creates a crisis in them, you know. So they're aware of it, that it's in the drama, for sure. But on the other hand, as we're shooting, we're having a really, it's not torture. Like, we take great joy in making these films. And it's really such a pleasure and a privilege, you know. I'm happiest when I'm making these films, or when I'm working with other people. You know, like when I'm writing or editing, which are lonely processes, it's a lot more difficult than when I'm on set.
There's a question all the way in the front as well. That's easy.
Եվ ուզեի իմանալ այդ բոլոր տարիների ընթացքում դուք հետևում եք փառատոնի ընթացքին եւ այսօրվա մեր հանդիպումը ոչ թե ռանդևու է, այլ կարծես թե վարպետության հրաշալի մի դաս էր, շնորհակալություն դրա համար եւ մի փոքր առաջիկայում ինչ ֆիլմ եք նկարում եւ ինչի մասին է դա?
The question was like, I haven't been here for a while, and that it's great to be back. And it's true that I have not, and it's true that this festival really, it was so emotional for me to be on stage with the three founders last night. And the festival has gone through all sorts of shifts and changes, but it's very, very beautiful that we still have this event. And I'm sorry, I'm forgetting the second question. My future work is going to be in.
She said that that we missed you.
Yes, yeah. I missed you. I missed you too. Yeah, I missed
Stating
you.
the obvious here, yes.
I missed you too. Yeah. Look, it's been a very, very brutal couple of years, and I think, you know, we talk about isolation. No one understands what we have been through. No one understands what this means. The main difference, when I used to come to this country, I was saying this to Arsene this morning, when we used to come here, we were coming as diasporans, coming from a place where we had been exiled from our ancestral land, coming to a place that there was a historic presence, and it had been permanent. And this is the first time we're coming back where there has been another erasure of ancestral land from the other side. And we understand how vulnerable it is. So the complexion of the country has changed completely because we've had a new diaspora, and we are in shock over this because no one has understood what that claim was. We understand how betrayed we are because we were the first nation to say that we had self-determination in the late 80s, 1990s. A petition was signed, it was sent to the United Nations. We had every right to have that claim, and it was ignored. And it's been consistently ignored. And here's the other thing that I will say, which is going to be painful. My generation, as we were being raised with the idea of Baspurakan we would get again. we would fight and we would be able to get those lands back. Your generation understands this is it. This erasure is really so cataclysmic. So I'm coming back to a country, and my country has changed profoundly, and yet the spirit, our spirit, is strong somehow, and the festival shows that we can share this culture, that we can share each other. It's beautiful. This is what's precious. But let's understand that we are alone as a people. We only have each other. This makes us unique, and given that we only have each other and that we have thrived for so long, says how exceptional we are as a people.
I think the only thing we can do is take it very well. We also have to try to... Oh, the name of new film.
I'm working on an opera of Yennefer by Janicek, which will be presented in Montreal. And I'm working on a very ambitious project at the Gorky Theatre in Berlin for next April, which is dealing with some of these issues that I just talked about identity. So it's an original play.
Okay, once more, maybe a very warm applause for Atom Égoyani. Thank you so much for being here with us. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for your presence. We wish you a beautiful day at the festival, and of course, we hope to see you at the audience. Thank you very much.